I finally played through Deus Ex Human Revolution and Deus Ex Mankind Divided. Now, I'd played Deus Ex Human Revolution way back in the day. I hadn't gotten particularly far in it. I'm not sure why I kind of was iffy about it. As people who have watched my channel probably know, I can dislike things just because I find the fan base obnoxious, or because I just feel the praise of something is hyperbolic. So when this game came out, it was just one of the most praised things I've ever seen. And that was kind of back when I was more involved with the nerd community. And they just kind of excessively, I thought, praised this game without really knowing what it was about or kind of any of the deeper issues behind it. And people just kept saying, and then there was kind of the other side who said, oh no, this isn't as good as Deus Ex 1. Nothing can ever be as good as that. It's the best game ever. So I admit when I went into this initially, I didn't give it a fair shake. I was kind of immature. I wasn't really willing to try to play the game properly or really try to figure it out. But upon second playthrough of this, I gotta say, it is a masterpiece. Human Revolution is a masterpiece of storytelling, gameplay, combat, world building. It is a truly great game in kind of every sense of the word. And it's kind of disappointed me because I actually had gotten Mankind Divided through one of the Steam sales, so I actually wound up playing it before Human Revolution. And I thought Human Revolution was much, much, much better than Mankind Divided. For a variety of reasons, which I'll go into now. So for the actual reactionary review, transhumanism is interesting because it's one of the few issues I don't really have anything resembling a decisive opinion on, one way or another. Is how much of it is a good thing, how much of it is a bad thing. It scares me, but I also see the appeal of it. I can see the desire, because as I've said, I'm kind of a reactionary modernist. I kind of mix some progressive ideas with some reactionary ideas in kind of a synthesis. So at a core level, kind of this Faustian impulse to invent, to grow, to change is very appealing to me. On the other hand, there's obviously aspects of it that are deeply concerning and threaten to fundamentally alter humanity in a way that nothing has before. So, because I kind of have these mixed feelings, I like anything that deals with the topic, be it Deus Ex, be it Ghost in the Shell, be it Altered Carbon, all those kind of things, because as I said, I don't really have a clear opinion on it. Is some good? How far should it go? Is uploading your mind into a computer? I mean, that's pretty bad, but what about gradually replacing your body with cybernetic parts? What about life extension? What about taking your brain out and putting it in a vat and pumping it full of stem cells and living forever in cybernetic bodies? There's not really a clear start point and a clear end point with it, and there's kind of all shades of gray in between. And it empowers good people and it empowers bad people. And it's a really scary but really fascinating topic. And anything that kind of explores it, particularly explores it well, is enjoyable. So I think what Deus Ex does well, and what most good kind of choose your own adventure type games do, probably the best example being Fallout New Vegas, is it presents you with a variety of different factions that represent different ideologies, but it kind of gives all the factions a fair shake. Like in this game, you have the people who support transhumanism, the people who oppose all technology, the people who kind of have the more middle ground, etc. And they kind of, I think, give everybody a fair shake. They give the people who are opposed to it, they make them sympathetic and they have good arguments. The people who support it are sympathetic and also have good arguments. So maybe let's just get into a bit of the factions. So the first faction we're introduced to is the pro-transhumanist crowd, which is represented by David Seraph. He's a man of a great vision, and his dream is a world in which everybody has basically unlimited access to cybernetic enhancements, and they can remake themselves as they see fit. His company mass produces augments. Kind of the thing that's holding back augmentation is you need a drug, neuropoison, I think it's called. I'm probably mispronouncing that. But people need to take it in order to prevent their augments from being rejected. And because of big pharma, it's extremely expensive. And many people basically work slave wages just to get enough money to pay for their neuropoison. So his dream is getting beyond that, is creating a solution where people don't need neuropoison anymore, and they can modify themselves as much as they want. They can be entirely in command of their own destiny. It's almost kind of a libertarian worldview that technology will create this world of limitless freedom in which everybody can literally be whatever they want. And it's kind of almost a naive optimism that technology will ultimately be a good thing. So David Seraph's faction kind of represents blind faith in progress. I think almost kind of a naive belief that people are ultimately good. And that once you give them all this power, that they'll be able to do the right thing. Now, this is probably the perspective I sympathize the least with. But once again, I think this appeals to a lot of people. And there is a certain seductiveness to being able to live an extremely long life, of being able to, like Adam Jensen can jump like 3 meters. He can filter out toxins. He's immensely strong. He can run faster than a normal human. I forget what it's called, the health core or the health unit prevents him from sustaining any damage from smoking or alcohol and keeps him free of any disease. So these things are all very desirable, and in a lot of ways some of it is inevitable, but ultimately I kind of feel that having this sort of thing would do more harm than good. So that's kind of one perspective. Then we have the perspective that's presented by Taggart. Now, Taggart is a member of the Illuminati. What's kind of interesting is the Illuminati largely gets a fair shake in the Deus Ex games, at least from my understanding. They're not presented as just being evil control freaks. They have a defined ideology, and they have like motivations, and they're not just in it for their own gain. They legitimately view themselves as being the only ones able to make the tough decisions for humanity, that they're the only ones with the wisdom and power to govern the world. And the games are, to a certain extent, I think, agnostic on the question. Because if you choose kind of some of the more libertarian endings, oftentimes you'll see kind of chaos engulf the world. The Illuminati's fundamental belief is that humanity needs to be shepherded. That any kind of change has to be slow and has to be measured. Morality has to be protected. The stability of society has to be protected. There needs to be laws and rules, etc. That if you were to create the world that David Seraph wanted, it would just be anarchic. There would be no laws, no boundaries, and that these things are critical in order for human beings to thrive. They think there can't be any freedom without order. So Taggart represents this. So he's a psychologist and he's a leader of the Human Front. Now, interestingly, he's not against all forms of augmentation. He just wants regulation of it. He wants like what it can do to be regulated. Obviously, safety rules, that kind of thing. Which I'm broadly sympathetic to. I mean, we regulate drugs, we regulate food and alcohol and that kind of thing. And I mean, it can go too far, but I think it's broadly a good thing. I like that meat inspectors make sure that the beef you buy at the store isn't loaded with tapeworms and parasites. I like that they inspect restaurants to make sure they aren't cooking rats and calling it chicken. Once again, like, these things can go too far, but broadly speaking, I like that there's regulation of some description in society, like that require cars to be safe, to have seatbelts. These things, I think, whatever little freedom is given up for them, is the dividends far outweigh it. And once again, there's always a debate: giving up how much freedom is too much in pursuit of how much safety and order. And that's kind of a debate you can have. And to a certain extent, ironically enough, Taggart kind of represents the middle path. Augmentation is not going to be banned. The technology is not going to be stopped. It's just going to be slowed down. And the Illuminati are going to try and figure out how to gradually introduce people to it. So that's kind of the second ideology we have. The third ideology is the one embodied by Darrow, who was the creator of the augmentation, who invented augments. Now, he's not able to augment himself because of a issue with his genetic code, and it's left him a very bitter man. He's also seen how much augmentation has changed the world. He used to be a member of the Illuminati, but he's become very disaffected with them. So I think his view, and he doesn't exactly say this, so I'm just going to kind of insert my own. For me, the ultimate terror I have with any type of augmentation or consciousness uploading is it undermines natural equality. Now, natural equality is a concept that Hobbes came up with, and it's the idea that fundamentally any person can kill any other person. In practice, there's normally a chance, like if the person's outside and you want to suicidally snipe them, or like Harvey Oswald or whatever, or suicide bomb or something, there's normally some way to kill some other person. Plus, if you're one-on-one, you might be able to kill the person. If you have a gun, then you don't. Then, regardless of how, they could be the president of America, they could be the czar and autocrat of all Russias. So long as you have a gun and they don't, in a particular situation, you have the potential to kill them. However, what augmentation and what kind of this transhumanist stuff does is it creates a situation where that natural equality doesn't exist anymore, where everybody isn't able to kill everybody, and you have a group of people who are so fundamentally not just kind of quantitatively superior, but are qualitatively superior to the rest, that you almost create two separate species. And while inequality in society is natural, massive inequality destabilizes society. And that was kind of a theme they had in the other kind of issue is it won't be for everybody, it'll only be for the rich. So you'll have an elite that is not only kind of separated by just wealth and culture and social status, but has become non-human in a lot of ways, who lives much longer. Imagine if death is the great equalizer. As horrible as any tyrant is, or as evil as any serial killer, whoever is, eventually they're going to die. Eventually old age or disease or trauma is going to claim them. And when it does, they're over. But if we introduce scenarios where these people can live for hundreds of years, or they replace their body parts and they'll be young and spry and powerful until they reach their 100 or whatever, then you get rid of that sense of natural equality. You create a world in which the elite or whoever can rule forever. And that's the thing that scares me so much about combat robots, is previously whenever a government gets too oppressive or too bad, eventually the people will overthrow it. The army will mutiny or something like that, or there'll be a coup. But what if the elite, or maybe even like an individual or like a group of a dozen people or whatever, have control of robots? Then the army will become redundant and people won't necessarily be able to overthrow them. Or it'll be much, much harder, and they won't have to make as many concessions to other social forces. It's extremely scary. I don't think people have fully grasped this. So what Pharaoh's plan is the Illuminati have implanted chips into everybody, and they're going to use it to take over the world or kind of control them. So what Darrow does is he sends a signal to all of the chips within augmented people to make them go berserk, and they start killing everybody around them. And Darrow does this as a way to show how dangerous the technology is. Because he could just hack all of them and could cause like a worldwide hundreds of thousands or millions of people to die by himself. And he's just trying to say, look, this is too much power to be in anyone's hands. This has fundamentally changed society. We don't understand how much stuff has changed and we're not ready for it. So he does that. He also wants to tell the world about the Illuminati, because his belief is that humanity needs to be fully aware of what they're getting themselves into, and also aware of what's controlling them behind the scenes, so mankind will be free to make their own choices without being pushed in one direction, without being pushed towards technology or being controlled by a central government. So I think it's implied in his version that humanity largely abandons technology as a result, and maybe retreats to a more agrarian existence or whatever. So which of the kind of the three do I mainly identify? And then there's a fourth choice where you just don't side with anybody, and you it's kind of a no gods, no masters ending, and you just blow up the transmitter or whatever, and you leave everybody to you leave the rest of humanity to kind of make their own decision. So of the three, I think I sympathize most with Taggart, and ironically enough with the Illuminati. The Illuminati is not, like I said, they're not specifically evil. They just represent an idea. Actually, I think it's kind of implied sometimes there's a religious aspect to them, that they believe in God and kind of divine providence, etc. Taggart himself is a Mormon who describes his belief in God as being kind of one of the things that motivates him. But the Illuminati does have a spiritual aspect to their goal. Now, they do believe in kind of one world government and one world order, but at the same time, they're somewhat sympathetic because the world of Deus Ex isn't exactly our world. It's in the future. Mega corporations control everything. You have augmented people running around. Terrorism is rampant. It's not exactly the same scenario we face today. So I'm more against one world government than anybody, but their belief that humanity needs to be controlled, that you need a group of wise men behind the scenes trying to prevent people from going too far one way or another and maintaining some kind of balance and order, I think is very sympathetic. Also, I think the idea of regulated augmentations as kind of a middle path is once again a very sensible alternative to either casting off technology or giving it completely free rein. Genetic engineering, augmentation, all these things have immense amounts of potential for medical applications. Imagine if we could just remove things like Down syndrome, autism, mental illness, if we could just remove genetic illnesses from the unborn. I'm not even talking about enhancing it, just get rid of like things like that or heart defects. That would be an incredible step as a species. And we could do that without resorting to like eugenics where we just abort babies with Down syndrome, etc. I think that's interesting. We see the next generation of bionic arms that are providing immense opportunities to people who were kind of crippled and weren't really able to do stuff. And maybe in the next generation, the new arms will be almost as not almost as good, but they'll just keep getting better and better. Maybe we're already working on bionic eyes, giving sight to the blind. These are all incredible things and stuff I think we should embrace, but it does need structure. You can't just have everybody have like the ability to summon bulletproof armor. Like obviously the stuff they have in Deus Ex isn't going to happen, at least not for hundreds of years. But I get their point that a lot of this stuff, once it really becomes practical, is just kind of has a very high probability of getting out of control. And like I said, turning into this scenario in which the rich just rule everything and run everything, completely just unregulated. So I think that kind of makes the most sense. I'm also kind of sympathetic towards Darrow's answer because not necessarily my freedom, But I do kind of think it's an interesting idea to just let humanity make up their own minds. To kind of show them, okay, here's the benefits and negatives of augmentation. It's up to each individual country to kind of plot their own path. It's up to every individual people to say how they want to deal with this, how they want to live in the brave new world. So to me, that's also a very interesting and sympathetic idea. I don't really sympathize with the idea that much, although I tried to get a fair hearing of just unregulated, limitless transhumanism. So that was kind of my view of the game. That was kind of my attempt to give the three factions their due. I hope you enjoyed the video. Maybe I'll do one on Mankind Divided as well. Although Mankind Divided I don't think was as deep as Human Revolution. But enjoyed the video. I'll talk to you guys later.